My name is Ryan. I'm on the operations team for Halt the Harm. I host a webinar series. We've got Kim from Sane Energy Project here and Karen from Frac Tracker Alliance. So really excited to get into the presentation. Basically, in the webinar today, you'll learn about fossil fuel infrastructure, residents already engaged in campaigns, elected officials invited by local residents who want them to learn more about the big picture, how locals fit in. Also, build your vocabulary and insight to the fossil fuel infrastructure process, find out what's happening in your local area, and learn how to contribute information to the discussion. Finally, understand what's happening regionally and what might come to your community, even if you might not face a project imminently. Our agenda is, we're wrapping up the introductions now, but Kim is giving a presentation about the You Are Here map. Now, usually this is something, they're going on a tour, so it's exciting that we're able to get this webinar presentation here online. But then Karen's going to do a presentation about the Frac Tracker mobile app. So I'm looking forward to hearing about that too. After that, we'll do the Q&A. And yeah, so I'll come back on toward the end. Kim, you want to take it from here?
Sure, thank you. So I'll share my screen and then open this. Okay, so my name is Kim Fracek, and I'm the director of Sane Energy Project. I'm excited to share a tool with you that explores the fracking infrastructure of our region where we live and the community that is affected by the industry, and also what communities are doing to defend their land, air, water, and democracy. We'll start with a short video. I think I can open it here. Make that full screen. This just gives us, we made this in our workspace. On our table, we love doing video and art outreach. So this just gives you like a fun, easy overview of what the map is about.
In 2014, Governor Cuomo banned fracking in the state of New York to protect our health and safety. However, since this grassroots victory, we've seen a massive build out of fracking infrastructure in New York State. It's important to keep the big picture in mind that just because we ban one part of the process doesn't mean we actually ban fracking. Let's start at the source. Pennsylvania still allows poisonous fracking wells despite community resistance. But from these wells is a network of pipelines that need compressors to push the gas through the pipe, which spew cancer-causing chemicals. One of the end games is to export the gas, not even serving the affected communities. There is still an effort to lock New York into a future of frack gas by massive power plants like CPV, Cricket Valley, and smaller ones like Sheridan Hollow disguised as resilient microgrids. The frac gas infrastructure will be fed by hundreds of frac gas wells in Pennsylvania and creates a frac gas transport, storage, and waste system in New York. This web of frac gas infrastructure not only harms dozens of communities, but contributes to climate change. The industry says gas is clean, but science says frac gas is just as bad for global warming as coal. Visit the You Are Here map and get involved in a local fight so no family has to live next to fracking wells or frac gas infrastructure.
Cool. So that just gives us a little, well, like teaser overview of, let's see. Can everybody see, is that good? Screen? It's not. There we go. So back in 2011, Sane Energy Project was founded in order to fight a fracked gas pipeline coming into the west side of Manhattan in New York City. At the time, many organizations were following the lead of local residents to build a movement to fight fracking in New York State. And when we started bringing up the notion of addressing pipelines in our list of demands, many people kept saying, no, 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 don't talk about the pipelines. You're going to confuse people. Just keep it focused on fracking, keep it focused on Governor Cuomo, and don't talk about the pipelines. And we felt pretty isolated from the movement. I knew what was happening on the other side of these pipelines since I grew up in Pennsylvania. But soon enough, we started talking to a woman named Canalis, who was our friend from Brooklyn and moved to Orange County, New York, about 60 miles northwest of the city. And on her street, the Millennium Pipeline Company was proposing a compressor station just right across the street from her house, where she was planning an organic farm and a retreat center. We started really digging into how the pipelines and the compressor stations were connected to fracking and speaking up about it. And soon enough, we started talking to other people in the southern tier that were fighting waste dumps from the fracking industry, and they were and also water theft from their municipal water supply and their local rivers and streams. And they were facing also facing having brine that was frac waste sprayed onto their streets in the wintertime to melt ice that would go into their table water where their drinking water source was. We started talking to people in the Finger Lakes who were facing the fracking industry wanting to store fracked gas on the site of Seneca Lake in the vulnerable empty salt caverns. Seneca Lake also happened to be the drinking water source of 100,000 people in the area. So enough of us got together and said, hey, you know what, we're really onto something here, and this just isn't about the drilling. And I know that makes the messaging much cleaner, but we really need to start talking about the ancillary infrastructure, and we need to start talking about the cradle-to-grave process of this extractive industry. So about 15 of us decided to get together for a meeting in Roscoe, New York, in a small church meeting room, and we decided to share our stories with each other. At first, they were very long, boring PowerPoints, and then Claire Donahue, who is the founder of Sane Energy Project, said, you know what we need? We need a map. And we agreed. We actually needed to have this big picture overview of all this infrastructure about what we're talking about, so we can actually start to organize and see how we're connected to each other, and also how the gas industry is beginning to understand like how they're moving their product to market. And that helped us gain a bigger clarity around what was actually happening in the threat of New York. So we went into this information with information from physicians and scientists and local resident knowledge, and we learned about the big picture of the fracking industry, and we all got really nerdy about it. And we started all the ins and outs of compressor stations, and we started talking to friends in the Midwest that were dealing with silica and sand mining industry. I started talking to friends who were dealing with the trucks that were to people engaging in direct action in Pennsylvania, like Elise Gerhardt on the Mariner 2 East pipeline. And next Wednesday, Halt the Harm will be hosting a webinar about the Mariner 2 East pipeline. We were able to put this map together and see the way the industry sees our region, and how the drilling was seeing the waste in the storage, and how they were using the Finger Lakes and the Western Catskills as service hubs where they could rail in and out with their salts and their sand and their water. And we were also understanding how the gas industry saw a market where they were shipping their product to. We knew that from living in New York City that we were that they were identifying the major metropolitan area to be large markets. So around the same time, when we were fighting the Spectra pipeline in 2011 through 2013, Mayor of our city, Mayor Bloomberg, had mandated that all boilers were now going to be converted from number 6 to number 4 oil and natural gas. And we also knew that he had a vested interest in seeing this fracked gas market grow. It was also infuriating at the time that he was getting so many environmental accolades when we were living in a city, knowing that he was working in collusion with this poisonous extractive industry. And at that same time, we were starting to get word that a liquefied natural gas port was being proposed for the coastline of New York. And we were so grateful that we had made this map and saw where the market for the gas was heading. We learned that the national push to export through LNG, or liquefied natural gas, was growing, and we were starting to get really nerdy about it, as we do with everything as activists, and we started digging into what LNG really was. we learned that LNG was actually even worse for the climate than regular shale gas, which is already 86 times worse for global warming than carbon dioxide. But LNG releases up to 40% more greenhouse gases on top of that due to the refrigeration for liquefying and transport of it. So now I want to show you the map. We update this map about every 2 years, and we keep refining it according to listening sessions that we hold with users of the map and communities in the local areas. So I'm gonna switch over here to the map. So what we've done is we made a website that sort of frames the map, and inside this map, in the map, what we've heard from people is they wanted tools. They wanted tools around it. How do I organize? How do I find out facts? And how do I, begin to share this information? So we added a glossary. You just can click on glossary, and you can go and read about the process of fracking here. And then we also added resources where you could find, the Fracking Compendium is an incredible resource written by some amazing scientists that tell you all about the health hazards and the scientific and medical information. You can link to the Frac Tracker Alliance that maps infrastructure all over the nation. And then you can also reach out to physicians, health professionals, the media, a whole bunch of, these guys do like investigative journalism on the money, and how to organize. These are some really wonderful coalitions that have good organizing tools. So, we also, have video of the people that we've interviewed. And it also includes the video that we just saw at the beginning of this presentation. But you go through and you can watch interviews. Those are also directly on the map. If you go back here, we'll go into that in a little bit. And then we also have, since this is a living map, and we're constantly updating it, like, oh, I heard that this compressor station is going to be expanded. So Karen and I will get together and update the information on the map. If you, because we're not everywhere, I'm in New York City and Karen is in Ithaca. If you have information that we are missing on the map, or like something you have a question about, we have this I have info to share button, and you can go through and just list out how ways to contact us, and that information will go directly to me, and I don't share or sell information to anybody, I promise. So back to the map. Now that we know that we have all this like great frame of like cool tools that we can use, downloadable, fact sheets from the compendium. If you need to meet with your elected official and you need to take these medical, why the fracking industry is harming your community. Some people were like, I love all the tools and everything, but I want to just see the map. I want to just explore the map. And that was a big thing. So what we did is we designed the website. So just right under this map, there's another link that you can go right to the Frac Tracker website and open just the map. and then on this map, we have this amazing legend. So I need to see a little bit behind this. Sorry, Ryan, I need to redo. Yeah, there we go. So you're able to turn on and off different layers. Like winds, we have had some victories. You can turn those off if you're like, okay, great, but I want to see just all of the compressor stations. And you can pick and choose what you want to be shown in this legend. You can also minimize the legend, which is really nice. You can also, you can scroll out or scroll in, just like Google Maps, and you can return home, which will put you sort of in the center. You can also change the base map. So say you're doing some research on topography, you can change the base so it's just topography. It's a really, really wonderful tool. Frac Tracker are geniuses at helping us put this together. But one of the really, my favorite part of this is being able to also do an address search. So say, for instance, you want to find out what's happening in your local area. So I heard that Courtney Williams was on the call, so I'm gonna type in Peekskill, New York, where she is. And where Courtney lives in Peekskill, New York, there's a massive expansion of the Spectra pipeline right next to Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant. So if we click here, what pops up is information about that infrastructure project, the location, the health impacts that link to the Fracking Compendium, and the local groups that are fighting this. So we want you to be able to connect to your community if you live in Peekskill, New York. We don't want you coming to Sane Energy Project because, you know, I live in New York City and I have my own local fights that I'm working on. So I want you to be able to connect directly to Courtney. We also have like a little video that we can show.
My name's Courtney Williams. I'm a cancer researcher. I have a PhD in molecular biology. I'm also a wife and a mother to 2 small children. We bought our house in Peekskill in 2011. Even though we didn't know it, 400 feet from our front door was a huge natural gas pipeline. Spectra is the parent company, and Algonquin is a more local company that operates the pipeline in our area. It helps to be able to understand the emerging literature on the health impacts of natural gas infrastructure. But even though fracking is now banned in New York, we have this massive natural gas pipeline with all of the accoutrements that go along with that, all of these sites where the gas can be released or leaked into the atmosphere and can impact the health of people who live there.
So you get you can also get human stories, and we continue to collect those. If you live in a community where you want to tell your human story and have it linked to this map, please come and say, I have info to share, and we'd love to travel and meet you and get your story up on the map. So that is some of the cool tools of the You Are Here map. And just to close, now that we're all sufficiently depressed about the fracking infrastructure that we face, I just want to point out that the LNG project that we were fighting in New York conflicted with a potential wind farm that New York State was talking about developing back in 2005. So we decided to organize our campaign around wind, not Williams. And we organized the surfers, we organized the kids, we organized the elected officials and the beachgoers, and we won. We won that campaign in 2015. So I just want to remind you, now Governor Cuomo just this past summer has now signed contracts with offshore wind developers. And I just want to remind you about the way the industry is seeing our region and the way we see our region. This is how we see our future. And this is something that we can work towards and organize towards. And I will stop there.
Thank you so much, Kim, for presentation today. I know that there's a bunch of people actually wrote in asking if there would be a replay, so I'm glad that we had that recorded so we can go back and look it over. And there's some praise coming in the chat as well. I'm going to share my screen now so that we can get Karen's presentation up. And I just want to remind everybody to check out the questions tab. There's 2 questions in there currently. So I can answer, Courtney, I can answer your question about the web address, or Kim, you could type that in as well in just a moment. But we'll be answering questions at the end as well. So you should be able to see my presentation now. Let me know if there's any trouble at all. And Karen, are you still there?
Yep, right here.
Awesome, great. So I'm gonna skip ahead to your slides and we're good to go.
Awesome, that's great. Okay, looks like got it ready to roll. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Hi everyone, this is Karen Edelstein. I'm the Eastern Program Coordinator of the Frac Tracker Alliance, and we are a small environmental not-for-profit that has been around since 2010. We started originally as a project at the School for Public Health at the University of Pittsburgh, and a few years later became a standalone organization. So we have, including myself, 8 staff people. I'm in New York State, and we've got 5 folks in Pennsylvania, a staff person in California, and a staff person in Ohio. So we do cover the whole country, and we do some work internationally. But I want to just give you this one screenshot of what our website looks like, and I'm not going to go too heavily into details about the organization because I want to focus mainly on our mobile app and how that can link together with the resources that Sane Energy Project and Frac Tracker have collaborated on to put the You Are Here map together. So Ryan, if you could go to the next slide. Just to give you a sense of some of the topics that Frac Tracker addresses, and again, this is not all currently, this is over the last 7 or 8 years that the organization has been in business. So, of course, because we are tracking fracking originally as an organization, we have been mapping well locations across the United States, and we have data for fracking wells and conventional wells in 43 out of the 50 states in the US, and that's over 1.7 million wells. And we have interactive maps and data sets for that available. Our information is all available through our website. We map pipelines, both those that are in existence and also those that are on the horizon and potentially threatening communities. We've been looking very heavily at how fossil fuels not only come out of the ground, but also, as Kim discussed, how they're transported from the wellhead to their ultimate use place, and that can be by rail. And many of you may be familiar with the phenomenon that we saw at Lake Mégantic in Quebec a few years ago, the dangers of transporting light crude by rail. Recently, we've been looking at also the issues of truck transportation of oil and gas, where there are not pipelines to service power plants and communities. I'm particularly interested in community-based resistance to oil and gas infrastructure, and the map that I worked on early on in my career with Frac Tracker was keeping track of the local bans and moratoria against oil and gas development in New York State, and we were very fortunate to achieve our goal of getting a ban on high-volume hydraulic fracturing in New York State that happened as a result of the community resistance. In places like Seneca Lake, as Kim mentioned, we've been very involved in looking at fuel storage in caverns and elsewhere. My colleague Ted in Ohio has become a real expert in mining of frac sand. So these are impacts on not only water, but also the landscape integrity itself as frac sand is getting mined out. We're looking at the petrochem industry, liquefied natural gas, air and water quality impacts. A lot of that is in collaboration with other organizations, but Frac Tracker has been going out with infrared cameras and recording film of how methane leaks out of compressor stations and along pipelines. And really true to our origins as a project of the School of Public Health, we really look carefully at environmental health impacts. And last but not least, we're not just fighting against stuff, we're also fighting for clean energy solutions. Okay, next slide, Ryan, please. So back to our original splash page for the website. Here in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that there is a link to downloading the Frac Tracker mobile app. So while the You Are Here map may show current fights that are going on against fracking infrastructure, a lot of the time, having people in communities who are on the ground, who are the eyes and the ears and the noses of fracking infrastructure that's going in their communities, those people are often a first line of alert to us and other environmentalists about new projects that are coming online. And we developed the mobile app so that people could go out with their smartphones to their neighborhoods or to their region and start documenting in real time what's going on in their neighborhood with the oil and gas industry. So this mobile app is free. You can download it from either the Apple Store or the Google Play Store if you have an Android. Okay, next slide, please, Ryan. So there are a few different ways that you can use the mobile app. Remember I mentioned that there are these 1.7 million wells across the US. Well, those are all available to view and explore in the mobile app, as well as compressor stations, processor stations, pipelines across the country as best as we can get that data and as fast as we can get those data in. It's not always easy because these are sometimes proprietary. Sometimes we might have information from industry or even from the Energy Information Administration of the United States government, and the locations are slightly scrambled. So we do have a lot of work to do always to clarify what we're told. And then, as you see at the very top, the user reports. That's where you come into play as a user of the Frac Tracker app. So next slide, please. Oops, stay there, Ryan. So one thing that you can see, before we go on to the next slide, you can watch as you scroll through the app, the activity of what's going on in real time. And so even if you're not inputting your own activity, you can see what other users are recording or being concerned about. So now the next slide, Ryan, please. So in order to contribute information to this user community, which is all available for everyone to see, you would have to create a profile first. Next slide. And once you're logged in to the app, this is very, it's quite intuitively designed and icon driven. You would select what sort of thing you are experiencing and what sort of a site you're at, whether it's a well, whether it's a pipeline, whether you are seeing trucks going by or trains, whether there's a compressor station that seems to be belching something particularly alarming. Next slide. And then you record what your senses are saying, whether this is a visual record, whether you're noticing a smell, whether there's sounds that seem alarming, and anything else. And there's also a way, if you can go to the next slide too, please. Oops, also to monitor and help moderate whether there are spurious reports coming in. And so you can also note that. But in addition, next slide, you can also put in text and descriptions. As long as you are connected with the mobile app and have cell coverage on your cell phone, the app will automatically record what your latitude and longitude is and dump that directly into the program. So we've had numbers of questions from people who might not have access to a mobile phone or don't have a smartphone that's GPS enabled. There's still a direct feed of all of this information that can be viewed on the web. We're not able to have individuals put new information in, but the web version of the app does allow you to view what other people have already added. And in this, you can look at reports. You can again see the locations of the drilled wells and these other features. This is like similar to the You Are Here map. You can also turn these layers on and off. So if you don't want to, for example, see all of the drilled wells while you're searching for reports, that would give you pictures and descriptions, you can turn any of the layers off to make it easier to read. So I think that is about it, and then we can save more discussion for the Q&A. So I'll turn it back over to Ryan.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Karen.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's incredible, this app and the crowdsourcing of being able to watch what the industry is doing. So that wraps up the presentation part. We're going to move on to the Q&A. So there's a couple questions in there. If you have a question for Kim or Karen, you can bring it into there. And then we're just going to tell you a little bit at the very end, when we're done with the Q&A, we'll tell you a little bit about what's happening with Halt the Harm Network. We have got a bunch of updates to share, but of course, you'll also get emails about that. So let's see. Kim, are you still there too? Oh, great.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Yeah, no problem. Cool. So there's a question from Courtney. Are there instances of people hooking into their local resistance using the map?
Yeah, people have written to me at Sane Energy Project about the Williams pipeline. So that's been pretty cool. I think we did a big presentation here in New York City kicking off our tour of the map this summer. And yeah, it was great. If you do get contacted by somebody through the map, like also just let us know so we know that it is indeed working as we have designed it.
Awesome. And also another question from Courtney about what's the web address for the map?
youareheremap.org.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and of course we'll share that in the post-webinar replay as well, all the links. Great. So there's a question, maybe this is for Karen around Frac Tracker stuff, but Kay is asking, is there data for Illinois, especially Southern Illinois? How would I get this information? Who is a contact person I could connect with?
Okay, so I'm looking at our oil and gas activity by map, by state on Frac Tracker, and if you go to fractracker.org/map, there, and you hover over the map of the U.S., that will take you to the Illinois state landing page. That will give you the locations, and I'm just looking at it now because that was not a map that I designed. You going to it, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm actually
so if you go,
screen.
yeah, so if you go to regions.
Okay. So I'm in regions.
State by state.
State by state, cool. I'm just like always so impressed by what a resource this website is.
And so go to the far right, state by state. There you go. And hover over Illinois or click on the hot link.
Wow.
So this will take you to a map of the activity in the state. As far as who the activists are in Illinois, I don't know that offhand, but I can ask my colleagues who are working in the Midwest, and they may be able to very easily put you in touch with those folks.
I also want to say that just on this point, the Frac Tracker Alliance map, this is a collaboration that Erica and I have been working on for a while to be able to do exactly what you were just asking about, Kay, which is to find allies on this map. So this is, so Karen, yeah, feel free to speak to this as well, because I know you've done a lot of the mapping work. But we essentially have a database of people within Halt to Harm network that we could help you connect with as well. So yeah, Kay, we can just be in touch via email. But anyone else who's listening to the webinar, this could also be a tool that you could use if you're looking to start a campaign or you're working on a campaign and you want to get like a list of contacts of people who are along a particular pipeline route or something like that. We would act as sort of like operators at a switchboard and go through our database and then help introduce you to those people.
As something I do add is that, you know, the most awesome thing ever would be if there were people across the United States who could create a You Are Here map for their region, because the You Are Here map that Kim and I worked on is for New York State, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, and we have our hands full with just those 3 states. But if we had people who would pick up and run with it, and we could build out a network with the same types of information in it, we could be that much stronger of a movement. Mm-hmm. So I'll put that challenge out.
Yeah, that would be amazing. Yeah. Great. There's a question from Walter is asking, where do you get information for Frac Tracker and how much of a delay before the info is mapped?
That's a great question. We get information from hundreds of resources. For New York State, a lot of the information on the wells comes directly from the DEC. It's all available, and what we do is combine and synthesize all of this information together to make it more easily readable. The Energy Information Administration from the U.S. government provides data on about a yearly basis. But then when I'm mapping the new and emerging pipelines, often we'll just pick up on something in a newspaper article, or somebody will tell us about something online. And so we sometimes, although not always, hear about these projects before they're really made available to the general public. At that point, when I'm mapping these new pipelines before the Energy Information EIA administration puts them up as a kind of rather rough representation of the pipeline, I will look on the web for industry maps. I will look for environmental impact statements that industry may have posted through Frac, and then hand digitize these maps and get them into our system. But it's not an instantaneous process at all. It can be several months to a year to get everything updated.
Mm-hmm.
But I do stuff. I will do stuff, for a particular project. We work both with individual organizations as well as putting up these updates annually.
There's another question about Frac Tracker from Kathleen. Have you considered adding a layer to Frac Tracker that would record instances of people who feel that have had adverse health impacts?
I think that would be an amazing map, amazing set of information to put up. There's not something that I know that is coordinated on a national level, but that's that type of information that would come through on the mobile app. And I would encourage people to register it that way, because all of the incoming information is pretty carefully monitored. But I like the idea of splitting that out to personal impacts. A lot of those stories about health impacts are captured in some of the videos that the You Are Here map includes, and I think Kim could speak to that as well.
And I'll add that the Environmental Health Project has created an environmental health channel, which is envhealthchannel.org. So this may be an example that we could use. We actually did a webinar with them last year and learned a little bit about how they were crowdsourcing monitoring of industry impacts in southwestern Pennsylvania. So it's, you know, specific to that region, but it could be a model, and there could be people you could get in touch with within that organization.
That's probably a link I should add onto the resources tab of the You Are Here map too.
Yeah, totally. Tracy has a question. Do you have a link for renewables, like local wind, solar, small hydro infrastructure that needs support to counter to fossil energy resources locally, like perhaps in an overlay map?
I think
Karen, you were working on one with New Yorkers for Clean Power.
Yeah, we did that. I've done a series of clean energy maps, and that's just for New York State. Are you in New York State?
This question from Tracy, yeah, you could respond in the chat if you're in New York State, and can jump back to that. There's a question from Paul. Are Indigenous frontline communities involved? Sorry, I had to leave. He's saying he had to leave the conversation momentarily, but just wondering who they are and where.
I could take a stab at that answer. Yeah, I mean, we work directly with the Ramapo Lenape Nation here. There are the First Nation of Manhattan Island and the surrounding regions. And we were working with them on, you know, the Pilgrim Pipeline, but then also lots of other infrastructure that is poisoning their communities. But a lot of times, you know, just specifically working with the Ramapo Lenape Nation, they're working right now on just trying to be identified as an actual sovereign nation. So they are juggling like a million balls at the same time, but you know, they're not just focused on, you know, fossil fuel infrastructure, but that's what's going on here locally. And, you know, we, on our tour, we were in the Western New York in Seneca Nation, and Seneca Nation came and participated in our You Are Here map tour, and we talked about a fossil fuel pipeline that they are working on defeating called the Northern Access Pipeline, run by National Fuel. So that goes from Pennsylvania up through Western New York and then out to Canada. And New York State denied that pipeline, and then the FERC overturned our ability to say no. So we're prepping, you know, for potential direct action because National Fuel wants to start construction next year. So that's the Seneca Nation, and they're an amazing community of leaders, and you know, we're just standing by on how they need to direct us to help build resources for a potential direct action campaign.
Thanks, Kim. I'll go to another question here. So it looks like there's some questions coming into the chat as well, so I'll try to do my best to jump back and forth. There's a question from Tracy. How can FERC overturn a state mandate or a Seneca mandate?
Sure. So they said that New York State waited too long in order to deny the pipeline. That's happened now twice in New York State. That also happened with the Valley Lateral Pipeline that's connecting the Millennium transmission line to the CPV power plant. So we have to really stay on our states to exercise the laws that we do have to defeat these fossil fuel projects to do that in a timely manner and make sure that all of our facts and science are buttoned up and really firm.
There's another question, I think, for you, Kim, which is about how to get updates about the Stop the Williams Pipeline campaign, things like that. Brenda heard that de Blasio said on NPR a few weeks ago the pipeline should not be built and was shocked, but also glad to hear him state that. So yeah, where can somebody find out about rallies or events, meetings, and stuff like that related to the pipeline campaign?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking. I built a standalone campaign website for the Stop Williams fight. So it's just stopthewilliamspipeline.org. And also there's a New Jersey group called Scrap Nessie. And I can follow up with with you and Ryan to get those links out to you. But you can find all of that at the Sane Energy website if you want to just reduce. You could be brought right to the campaign website.
Great.
Looking forward to getting you involved.
Awesome. And you have an email list too.
We do. We have a vibrant email list with actions that go out to Stop Williams, and we have lots of really great stuff coming up.
There was a question from Kathleen about whether or not the mobile app would have an option to enter symptoms or illnesses. And then Tracy kind of, I think, responding to that comment that maybe that could interface with RN nurses about health. They may have something. Is that something that exists within the app, Karen, or that might be on the roadmap?
Well, on the mobile app, there's a place where you put in whether it is a sense of smell or or taste, and I think it would be appropriate there.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. There was a question from Annie about mapping of the electric grid. Is there an interactive map of some kind where, an interactive map of the electric grid?
Not that I have done yet, although I do have, and again, the question is that for New York State or elsewhere? I know that I have seen information on power lines, but the details of the electric grid are a little more tightly held, in part, I think, because of Homeland Security reasons that we're told, but that's sort of a moving target too. Kim, do you know anything about that, Kim?
Not about mapping the electric grid. I know that my pal Shay over at the Sierra Club is working on the Canadian hydro issue, so they might have a need for something like that coming up. But we should all just stay in the loop with each other about that.
Mm-hmm. Kind of a follow-up is Annie's saying that at this time, Mayor de Blasio is seeking to purchase electricity from mega dams in Canada as a CO2-free electricity via transmission line.
Yeah, that's correct, Annie.
Do you consider mega dams as renewable energy?
Sane Energy Project does not. We're very, very much against the mega dam. They're, speaking to Paul's query earlier, it's detrimental to the indigenous nation at the source of this dam, and it's also driving a further wedge between upstate and downstate people because they're building major transmission lines in order for big business here to buy renewable credits instead of building energy efficiency and renewable standards into the buildings here in New York City. So that's a big campaign. I know Sierra Club, they're taking the lead on organizing stuff, and Sane Energy is really excited just to support where we can on that campaign. It's very important that we're aligned on anti-big hydro.
Awesome. Yeah, Tracy's responding, says small hydro good, large hydro not so good. Great. So that wraps up the questions in, well, there's one more from Aaron's asking, I'm with 350 New York City. Are there any rallies or protests planned for Dan Scammer or other fracked gas projects near New York City?
Yeah, there's a big rally that's being planned for October 13th for the triangle of the fracked gas power plants, CPV, Dan Scammer, and Cricket Valley on October 13th in Poughkeepsie, New York. Also, there's talks from the local community about starting a direct action campaign against Cricket Valley. And the big climate rallies are coming up. So there's going to be a general strike called upon by the climate leaders in our youth that are going to be asking for a general strike on September 20th, and there will be a lot of activity buzzing around then. So I think everybody in the world is going to be participating. So if you are working with a local community, definitely plan a general climate strike around September 20th.
Awesome. Tracy's asking, anyone have details on how much fossil fuel material goes into fossil resin for single-use plastics?
Well, it's vast, obviously, and I don't have an actual figures for you, but we are starting. Frac Tracker is starting to look along with a number of other partner organizations at both the petrochem massive expansion, both in the Gulf and in the Ohio River Basin, which is the Ohio River's been recently declared the most polluted river in America, and it is really under attack by numerous industries who are building these just impossibly hard to imagine large cracker plants where they are taking basically a waste product of the fracking industry, ethane, and turning it into plastics. And there's a number of these facilities that are planned or currently in construction in southwestern PA and down into Ohio and towards Kentucky. So it's a big fight ahead, and that's why we are looking to everybody to plug in and lean into it.
Yeah. Thanks, Shannon, for mentioning in the chat to check out the petrochemicals page on Frac Tracker's website. So looking at it now. So there's a lot going on in the chat. Looks like there's people are sharing some links. It says get me in touch. People are sharing a couple. Rick says I can volunteer to help with your Here map in Colorado. So we'll definitely follow up with everybody to try to connect people with each other, because that's at least my work with Halt the Harm Network. That's what it's all about. Let me see if there's any final questions, because it is time for us to wrap up here. Courtney's asking, what groups are organizing the event on October 14th?
Yeah, it's October 13th, Courtney, in Poughkeepsie.
Okay.
It's the Stop Cricket Valley folks, both New Jersey and Connecticut, are sort of taking the lead on that. Johanna Fallert is one of the lead organizers on that, and we'll be supporting that the best that we can. We have 2 part-time employees at Sane Energy Project, so our capacity is a little stretched thin. But if everybody could head up to Poughkeepsie on October 13th, it'll be a good rally.
There's also a day of climate action that's coming up on November 30th. As well, that's in conjunction, I believe, with the UN Climate Change Summit.
Thank you so much, Kim and Karen, for your presentation today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Ryan. Thanks for organizing it.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for your questions. I feel like we all had a really nice little circle here. It was nice.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. All the chats and questions, and I think we have a big list of links to send out after the webinar. So as we wrap up, I want to tell you a little bit about Halt the Harm. In case you're new to Halt the Harm Network, this is your first webinar with us, then I just want to tell you, basically, you can find out everything you need at halttheharm.net. but there's one thing I really want to make sure you see, which is this little beacon here in the bottom right. We call it the beacon, and it's linked to the Fracking Help Center. And this is a project that we're working on with Frac Tracker, Mountain Watershed Association, and the Fair Shake Environmental Legal Services. And this is actually connected to a pretty detailed help center. You can find out more at frackingresource.helpscout.net or frackingnextdoor.com. And the idea is that pretty much any question about like permits or zoning or things like that, we have answers to that have been prepared and written by people with a lot of experience and technical knowledge. And the coolest thing about this is that if we don't have answers to questions around these topics, then any questions that you ask here, so if you ask a question here, then that'll prompt us to write a response, not only to you, but that we can also share with the Fracking Help Center at large. So our goal with the Fracking Help Center is to create this kind of knowledge base that all of us in the movement, not just in, well, a lot of this content is Pennsylvania specific, not just in Pennsylvania, but anywhere where there's questions that can be answered or documentation that we can start to gather. So definitely check out the Fracking Help Center. And the reason why I started at Halt the Harm is because I'm going to send you an invite to join the directory, because the directory is, I saw a lot of people in the chat who want to connect with each other. This is a place where you can connect with people in the movement, see people's profiles, and actually message them. And we'll be launching a new forum pretty soon. We just announced an opening for a welcome committee fellowship. So we're looking for people to help be moderators and be engaging in the directory that we're rolling out. There's a bunch of other services. You'll get all the announcements and stuff like that, but I don't need to go on and on and on. We're at 2 o'clock, so I want to thank everybody for their time and for coming on the webinar today. And let's be in touch. That's what it's all about. So with that, have a fantastic day, everybody. All right. See you later, Kim. Bye, Karen.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. That went great. Appreciate
We'll be in touch, and we'll pull together the links for everybody.
That's great. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.